Our mission today is a deep dive into accountability. We're cutting through a pretty substantial stack of sources,
Yeah.
specifically the official opposition bulletin. It details the very first week of parliamentary sittings for 2026. That's January 6th through the 9th.
And this period is key, right? It's immediately after the holiday break.
Exactly. And it gives you a really crystal clear snapshot of where the political flashpoints are erupting right now.
That's a great way to put it. And for you, the listener, you have to understand this source material is invaluable. It shows a highly strategic approach from the opposition.
It wasn't just political theater then.
No, not at all. This was a really focused effort. It was centered on demanding accountability in four major high-stakes areas.
And what were they?
Okay, so immediately we saw them applying pressure on failures in post-disaster management after Cyclone Ditwa. Then there was intense scrutiny of some proposed education reforms, a major public fight over these controversial electricity tariff hikes, and then the persistent sort of structural problems that are plaguing the health sector.
So our deep dive today is going to structure those debates for you, showing how these, I guess, seemingly separate issues all connect.
They all connect back to that central theme of governance and really its efficiency.
And the preparation for this was immediate. The scene was set on January 6th, the day sittings resumed. The opposition party leaders held a special internal meeting.
Right, to solidify their strategy. They confirmed they would focus exclusively on these immediate crucial issues. I mean, they walked into that chamber armed with facts and ready to push for answers.
Okay, so let's unpack this. We should probably start with institutional integrity. That's often where you see the deepest systemic weaknesses exposed, isn't it?
It really is. The first item that dominated the early part of the week was the non-appointment of a key oversight official.
And the second?
The second was this huge constitutional clash over the role of the judiciary.
Let's start with that non-appointment crisis.
Okay, so MP Kabir Hashim, he makes a special statement, and he highlights a staggering fact. The country had been without a confirmed Auditor General since December 6th of the previous year.
Wow. And what's so fascinating there is how the absence of, just a single person can paralyze the whole oversight mechanism.
The paralyzing factor, that's a serious thing.
So why does the lack of an Auditor General stop everything in its tracks like that?
Because the Auditor General is the key advisor. He's the procedural engine for two absolutely crucial parliamentary oversight bodies.
We're talking about COPA and COPE.
Exactly. The Committee on Public Accounts and the Committee on Public Enterprises. These are the committees responsible for monitoring every single rupee of public money spent.
And scrutinizing state-owned enterprises.
Right. So without the Auditor General's input, his procedural assistance, these bodies essentially stall. It just eliminates a fundamental check on the government's financial activities.
So the opposition is seeing this as more than just some administrative delay. They see it as a deliberate effort to curb legislative oversight.
Precisely. And MP, Dr. Harsha De Silva, he took a very tactical step to force the issue. He questioned the refusal of the government to even table the letters that had been sent about this.
The letters sent to the president and the speaker.
To the president and the speaker about this very critical failure. And when they refused, he just took matters into his own hands and tabled the letter himself.
A classic move to bypass obstruction, get it on the record.
It forces transparency right into the parliamentary record. It's the procedural war in action.
Okay, so that's one battle. Now, the second major clash sounds like it was much more foundational.
Oh, absolutely.
It revolved around the independence of the judiciary. 31 opposition MPs submitted a proposal to appoint a PSC, a Parliamentary Select Committee.
Right, to inquire into the entire process of appointments, promotions, and transfers of judges.
This is where the constitutional stakes get really, really high.
They skyrocket. The Speaker rejected the opposition's proposal outright. And his rationale is critical for you to understand. The Speaker argued that if Parliament were allowed to create a committee to investigate judicial appointments, it would directly violate the core principle of separation of powers.
The checks and balances.
The checks and balances. So the argument is that this kind of legislative oversight would fundamentally weaken the independence of the third branch of government.
It would render the whole thing unconstitutional.
That's what the Speaker stated, yes. Because it would allow the political branch Parliament to exert influence over the judicial branch, and that weakens its autonomy.
But the opposition, they framed that risk completely differently, didn't they? They saw the lack of oversight as the bigger threat to integrity.
They did. And this is that classic tension, independence versus accountability.
So what was their counter?
Well, MP Dayasiri Jayasakara, he questioned the procedure of the ruling itself. He asked if the Speaker had even consulted the Secretary General beforehand. But more importantly, he voiced the primary concern. If the process for promotions isn't transparent, judges might feel this immediate pressure, conscious or not, to issue decisions that are favorable to the government.
Just to secure their own career advancement.
Exactly. Self-preservation could replace impartial justice. That's the fear being presented here.
And some of the language used was pretty strong.
Incredibly strong. MP or GSP Pereira was particularly forceful.
No.
He called the rejection one of the, and I'm quoting here, darkest days in history.
Wow.
He claimed the ruling distorted prior speakers' precedents on protecting citizens' rights, noted it hadn't even been discussed in the Parliamentary Business Committee, and then he made this very serious allegation.
What was that?
That the ruling had allegedly been written by outsiders. So the opposition is clearly framing this procedural rejection as an institutional crisis. They're using these dramatic statements to make sure the public understands the high stakes.
Okay, so while those institutional battles were dominating the first half of the week, there's this underlying threat to public stability, right?
A very real one.
The immediate fallout from Cyclone Ditwa, that forced a different kind of confrontation in the chamber. Let's pivot to crisis management, specifically the extension of emergency laws.
Right. The central conflict here was procedural, but with massive political implications. Opposition MPs objected vehemently to extending the emergency law under the Public Security Ordinance.
And their analysis was that the regulations being extended just weren't relevant.
Not relevant to disaster relief in 2026, no.
Why not? Were they just outdated?
They argued that the regulations were explicitly based on past crises, specifically the Easter attacks and the Era-Galaya period.
Ah, so they contained provisions designed to suppress protests and control expression.
Exactly, not facilitate aid distribution and recovery. So the government was using a hammer meant for security threats on a problem that needed, a logistical toolkit. And the opposition leader highlighted this disconnect with a really compelling example. He questioned the relevance of regulations that criminalized, quote, pasting leaflets and notices in a manner detrimental to public security.
And he asked the chamber directly,
how does that regulation assist people affected by a flood? I mean, that detail just crystallizes their claim that the tool didn't fit the job.
So if I'm tracking this, the opposition sees the government using this post-disaster scenario to essentially maintain a legal framework that restricts public dissent.
That is the core accusation. MPs Dilip Jayawera and Ranjit Maduma Bandara openly suggested the extension was introduced primarily to prevent public protest.
To curb the backlash over the handling of the disaster.
The inevitable citizen backlash. And this suspicion gained a lot of weight when they noted that the defense secretary had already reportedly stated in writing that the immediate disaster situation had ended.
So if the emergency is over, why maintain the emergency regulations?
Exactly. It transforms the debate from disaster relief into a debate about the suppression of democratic rights.
And what about the actual recovery efforts? Did they touch on that?
Oh, that was the other essential component of their strategy. The opposition leader emphasized that an international aid conference would be absolutely crucial to get the funding and coordination needed
to recover from the damage.
The extensive damage from the cyclone. And MP Hector Apumi made sure the focus didn't just stay on macro policy. He demanded specific answers for small and medium-scale entrepreneurs who were directly affected, financially crippled by it all.
Right, demanding both high-level plans and that granular local support.
It was a two-pronged approach.
The economic friction points are where the rubber really meets the road for the average citizen. This week, it seems like two major themes emerged.
They did. Punishing utility rate hikes and widespread corruption allegations tied directly to energy contracts.
This is where it gets really interesting, the numbers.
Starting with the immediate hit to household budgets. Electricity tariffs. The opposition leader submitted a formal question, Understanding Order 27-2.
Which is a critical mechanism, right? It forces a formal public government response.
It does. And the inquiry focused on the proposed 11.57% electricity tariff increase for the first quarter of 2026. The opposition framed this as a betrayal of a campaign promise.
It was a dual-pronged attack, then.
It was. First, the immediate economic impact and the government's perceived failure to fulfill its election promise to reduce tariffs. Second, they delved into the long-term energy strategy.
Questioning the removal of subsidies.
The removal of subsidies and, critically, changes to the payment mechanism for generating renewable energy. They weren't just arguing about the price of power. They were scrutinizing how the country sources its power.
Interesting.
The inquiry specifically listed concerns about the proposed tariff structure for wind, small hydro, and biomass energy sources. It shows a remarkably detailed focus, on the technical mechanics of the sector.
Okay, now let's talk about corruption. The number that was raised during that coal tender debate, it's just staggering.
It is. MP SM Marikar raised critical views regarding an allegedly corrupt tender for coal imports for the Lakvijaya power station. He alleged a loss of approximately 10,000 million rupees.
That's 10 billion rupees?
10 billion, all due to substandard coal imported from South Africa. This wasn't just a poor tender choice. This claim is a concrete, highly visible example of how bureaucratic negligence and alleged corruption directly erode national financial recovery.
And he demanded the tender be canceled.
Immediately. And this wasn't an isolated incident, was it?
No. MP Mujibur Rahman reinforced the systemic nature of the problem. He recalled a clear previous cabinet decision not to award projects without tenders.
And
Yet, he noted, licenses had recently been granted to 7 renewable energy projects without any competitive bidding process at all. It suggests a pattern of bypassing established procurement rules.
rules designed to protect public funds.
Exactly. The third major economic debate was about the Colombo port city.
Right? The second reading of the Commission Amendment Bill. This is that massive project intended to turn the area into a major financial hub.
But it sparked a fierce debate about economic liberalization versus national equity.
It's a textbook governance challenge. You have MPs like Dr. Harsha De Silva calling for rapid economic liberalization, significant infrastructure investment to attract private capital.
And MP Ravi Karunayak stressed that foreign investment won't just materialize out of love, it needs incentives.
A pragmatic view, for sure. But the tension is that those very incentives seem to be actively discouraging local investors.
That was the core friction point raised by MP Faizer Mustafa.
It was. He requested a formal review of how Sri Lankans should pay taxes within the port city. He pointed out the major disincentive.
What is it?
When a local investor tries to invest outside the port city, they face this long, complex approval process, and then they pay about 35% income tax.
Compared to the preferential treatment inside the port city?
Exactly. You see why local capital feels sidelined. It becomes a debate about creating economic growth without creating an unfair, two-tiered system.
Let's move now to that final segment of scrutiny, the issues that directly affect daily life. Classrooms, clinics, local infrastructure.
This is where the opposition connects that macro policy failure to the micro-level quality of life.
And the concern over education reform was so potent, they prepared a no-confidence motion against the Minister of Education?
They did. They started collecting signatures on January 7th. A no-confidence motion is a very serious declaration of political intent.
What were the core grievances against the proposed reforms?
Well, there were high-level philosophical concerns. The opposition focused on what they called moral and social relationship breakdowns embedded in the new curriculum. But the criticism became really concrete with a very visible failure in quality assurance.
The grade 6 English module scandal.
Precisely. This issue is a perfect microcosm of institutional breakdown. Specific questions were raised about serious errors in the module.
And about the criteria for including external websites.
Especially private institution websites in official government modules. The lack of adequate teacher training, and crucially, the complete failure of anyone to take official responsibility for these public errors.
And the risk profile here is huge.
It is. MP Govinda Jayawardena elevated it from a detailed fault into a major warning. He questioned what disaster would occur if a faulty link reached 45,000 school children.
It reframes an editorial error as a failure in institutional quality control.
One that puts children at risk and undermines public trust.
And moving from the classroom to the clinic, what were the immediate health and safety issues?
2 major points. First, Dr. Ramanathan Archuna inquired about the legal and hospital treatment issues around the tragic death of 12-year-old Kuhanasan Tinoja.
Demanding accountability for the family.
And second, an adjournment question was raised to the health minister about the critical issue of medicine quality.
That's a huge systemic problem. What was the solution they proposed?
They pushed for government measures to ensure quality standard medicines and a specific demand for an international pharmaceutical quality testing laboratory.
And they also questioned providing medicines without testing.
Yes, signaling that they see testing oversight as completely non-negotiable for public safety.
And finally, that rapid-fire list of granular infrastructure and welfare issues, this really shows the comprehensive scope of their tracking.
It does. They hammered home the broken promises. On labor, MPs Mano Ganasan and Juan Thondaman highlighted that estate workers have still not received the promised basic salary of Rs 1750.
And thousands are still waiting for aid.
10,000 people in the estate sector still waiting for rebuilding Sri Lanka project aid. On land disputes, questions were raised about paddy lands seized by the army, lands that were never returned.
Even transportation quality came under fire?
Yes, showing no details too small. They flagged concerns over fraud created by limiting vehicle ownership transfers to just the head office of the Motor Traffic Department.
Creating bottlenecks.
Unnecessary hassle, potential bottlenecks, and they noted a clear deterioration of quality on the Batticaloa train route. The newer trains carry fewer passengers than the old Romanian ones.
So it's about efficiency, safety, and capacity in every aspect of life.
That's the point they were making.
So to summarize this highly focused week...
Yeah, this deep dive shows a parliament where the opposition is intensely focused on accountability.
Yeah.
They're drawing clear lines in the sand. They targeted areas where political decisions like extending the emergency law or the tariff hikes directly intersect with institutional stability.
Whether that's the failure to appoint an auditor general or the rejection of judicial oversight.
Exactly. It highlights a massive continuous effort to connect high policy debates like the IMF, the port city directly, with fundamental citizen concerns.
Education quality, healthcare safety, local infrastructure maintenance.
The things that matter day to day.
And it is worth noting, amidst all this political pressure, that the opposition leader's office took time during the week to launch its inclusion project.
That's right.
In commemoration of International Braille Day, they enhanced accessibility for people with disabilities, including issuing publications in technical formats for the visually impaired.
And that strategic inclusion effort brings us to our final provocative thought for you to carry forward from this deep dive.
Okay.
The rejection of the Select Committee on Judicial Appointments highlights a perennial tension in governance everywhere. When does legitimate legislative oversight threaten judicial independence? And what non-political mechanisms are truly available to ensure transparent accountability for institutional appointments and promotions without crossing that constitutional line?
Something worth pondering as you track government efficiency and the stability of democratic institutions.